Nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, for your kind introduction. And thank you, Naomi, and your foundation, and also Donald Bates and University of Melbourne, to have the honor of be an understudy for Benedetta, architect that I admire. And then also, yeah, it was made me to visit also second time, after exactly 10 years ago, which was beyond actually shocking in a best possible way. Almost become more like Asian city, actually, for me. Anyhow, today I'm an architect, so I usually, I've been fortunate, I have to say, that I was able to be involved quite a diverse urban sort of conditions that are kind of temporal, changing conditions for the last 14 years in Seoul. Most of the project that I'm showing today is all around that area, say. And I mean, where does Seoul fit into a livable city list? I think it's maybe below 50. I think it has actually a lot of challenges, although what I confirm today is that it has been many shared goals and sort of ideas also, so that I was very happy to discover. I almost wish we should bring this whole thing tour to Korea, because we are also having, like Marissa's been working on, we have also first Biennale of Architecture and Urbanism inaugurating this early September, and there's a great civic leadership for that. So without further ado, let me see, does it, is this one? Okay, sorry about that. This was 100 years ago, or more than that, it's beginning of 20th century, and Seoul has grown about 50 times in terms of population. And Seoul was actually planned city, actually has a history of 625 years ago, exactly. And that was beginning of the kingdom, and it was a planned city that was actually king hired, new emperor hired a feng shui master, a monk, to look around the site. And it was more about this ancient philosophy about this harmony with nature and so on. And it was surrounded by mountain and the water on the south side and so on. And this was, beginning of modernity, maybe 80 years ago during the Japanese colonization time. And city has about increased in terms of its size 10 times first half of 20th century, and then another later half century 5 times. So that's a mix of about from 200,000 to 10 million people by the time 1990. So this is what it looks like. I don't know you want to bring Seoul to here, but it's quite, there's a lot of interesting challenges. What makes it still unique and the brilliant choice is that I don't think there are many cities, exception of Hong Kong, maybe Sao Paulo, there's such a large metropolis exists with mountainous terrain. So which is quite a blessing, with a large river in the middle. And let me see, what is in front of the water, in front is the southern part, which is only 50 years old. It was a rice field before, and where the tower is, mountains behind is where the city was originated, behind the mountain with a radio tower. More or less, you're looking at sort of a same thing. It's also, it's one photo doesn't capture the whole thing. However, end of the 20th century was we are the kind of a cliche of the booming Asian metropolis, because actually growth of Seoul stopped late 90s after reaching 10 million people. And then it's been sort of, we're projecting maybe year 2040, we will go down to somewhere 9 million or so. And which has to do with, again, the very similar demographic changes, like aging. We're catching up as fast as we can to become like a Japan also. And there's a lot of challenge, but somehow also what also the big change has been was the expansion of suburbia. Because the Seoul metropolitan region, as Andrew said, it was 25 million now, and used to be, which is half the country population, which is 50 million. But 30 years ago, it was less than 1/3 of the population living in this metropolitan area. So in fact, what that says is that actually this is what we call suburbia, which is more modern, let's say 20, 30-year-old cities. There are 12 of them. And each one maybe 1 million to 600,000 people living there. And it's more modern, more higher and denser in a way. And also you also have a same branded apartment under the name of Samsung Corporation or Hyundai and so on. And you're living even more modern environment, but at the cost of spending 2 or 3 hours by commuting. Although we're not the number one, I think Shanghai is like number one for commuting time. So there's lots of challenges. And when you look at it more on a street level, this was 100 years ago. This was the main palace, which is still the center of a very iconic location. And then jump to after the war, 70s, this was when I was a kid. There was very autocratic government, dictator. He saw the Autobahn in Germany, and he started putting all over country very wide road, almost comparable to Moscow, where I have visited recently. This very wide lane road, and people are quite shocked that in the middle of like 8 lanes or 12 lanes easy. But at that moment, it was quite aspirational. But thanks to a very fast industrialization and growth, it quickly filled in with the cars. This was when I was in college, late 80s. Although the old fabric of the city has such a kind of a small alleyways and it's almost have this community at work, let's say, and small kids actually making themselves. I mean, this was kind of my childhood in a way. And wherever Koreans take off their shoes, it becomes their room in a way. And this was also my college time, that this was actually, the elevated road is actually MVRDV recent Seoul, what we call, which is the sort of a Seoul's take on maybe attempt to become like having a high line, but in its own unique way. But this was also, but there was no actually public space, maybe because we are so good at appropriating space, but mainly because of because political situation, the government was really afraid to have people gathering. So even I remember my school was actually kind of a center of the student demonstration. We didn't have a concrete block on a pedestal because it would turn into rubbles, and we start drawing with the Molotov cocktails and so on. But then quickly, this was 1990, I was doing a research with a student, and it was then we become quickly, still, I mean, we kind of sort of progress toward democracy, but also become quickly rich, and then we got everybody have a car, so we have to quickly duplicate the road. So there is no sort of a sense of this kind of common shared public space, yet this 17-kilometer road, the long ring road, elevated highway, quickly become this nice sort of colossal urban living room that people start to occupy and making themselves again at home. And then what I think it was the Dutch contribution, the Dutch soccer coach, when we hosted World Cup with Japan 2002, this is the first time that also government realized people can gather massively on the street without being violent. And this was actually quite a unique moment because unlike this hooligan event that happens in other countries, it's actually is very good gender balance, and also it's actually become more like a family entertainment. And this is not the soccer event, but actually this is protest against the FTA agreement that happened after. So the political sort of activism, the style has also changed. And I call it, this is a kind of a very collective intimacy, which is kind of unique in our region. Also, Japan is quite different. They're much more courteous, and let's say you have to be much more careful. But this is also a typical thing that has been happening internally, where the large bathhouse where you have this heated floor and you could be wearing the same uniform, sleeping next to strangers, listening other people snoring. So this also is a quite common weekly, daily sort of a life. This is not Korea. This is Shanghai. I discovered when I was doing a Shanghai Expo Korean Pavilion 2010, and they have this, they try to ban this practice of people walking around comfortably in their pajamas. Is again, I think this is sort of sign of ownership also, which I think they should keep. Because I remember like artist Julian Schnabel is wearing like a robe, like a king, but it's, here everybody is really, and they're all properly covered, I mean, pajamas, so it's like a suit. Anyway, since this World Cup incident there, actually, Seoul has started to actually turn all those important areas of gathering into public space. So we're kind of engaged quite a few events that was, in this case, in front of City Hall, About 6 million people visited for 8-day event. We work with the Realities United in Germany. It's actually like a media sort of displaying 1,300 LED sponsored by this lighting company, which is reused, and it probably is kind of the largest chandelier we have done. And then but that event, actually that was 2008, but again, this FTA against this kind of USA pressure opening, this was kind of what we call mad cow. So it was actually, there's a seamless sort of political activism and also family entertainment kind of spread out. And I think as a result, this is a very recent story you probably heard of. Since last October, there has been 17 weeks, every Saturday, people start to gather because they got so upset by this government corruption, which ended up become a real revolution in a most peaceful way. And now we have a new government started, and people are very happy with it since the last 2 months. So I was actually part of a very beginning, first one, only 20,000 people gathered, because I was actually really fed up with pressing likes in Facebook, let's say. I think that was actually before American election result, but it was actually, and then next week become 200,000 people, and then this was a moment that it was almost 2 million people gather. And when, I don't know if you have seen it, but it's actually quite stunning, because it just become like a big, happy, it's like a biggest, almost a festive thing that it was a very, in a way, almost moving. And I'm going to talk about 4 things. One is the density we talked about, and I think I've seen also the new change here, a lot more towers here, and they're beautiful, exceptional towers. But when we're looking at one of the example on the left, we did Missing Matrix, and for us has been actually, when you're actually city, 60% of the people lives in this high-rise environment. Actually, the internal situation become your urban condition, which is not as rich as what was happening that I show in the ground level. And it's mostly about this very suffocating, minimized common space which revolves around elevator. And there's really, there's a lot of it is an architecture problem. So we actually try to make it more sociable, and also there's a, in a way to translate this urban condition into vertical in a many possible way. And then it become almost like a prototype. This is one of those sky gardens, and also it's a lot about this. Also, these massive towers are quite sort of monumental, but we also try to kind of insert this intimate sort of a way. We also have some simple things, and we were fortunate to actually kind of test and actually try out a few things. Also, here we call it bundle matrix, sort of contrast against all these very compressed boxes, and then we kind of find a way to open up a little bit, whether, I mean, I'm a smoker, so I can get out and smoke a 37th floor balcony and so on, but it's actually, it's been interesting to observe. And then it's also this same bundle we kind of applied a few years later. It's much more micro housing, you can say, about 99 units, 10-story high, and then also as a way to create this kind of possible area where you can breathe and also potentially appropriate. And actually this was empty, but now it's packed with books, and sort of like they call it book cafe. It's the same scale comparison how this bundle idea is applied in 2 different scale buildings, and there's also comparison of these 2 towers. One is very short one. And then, but I think these things quite takes, for us has been a very interesting discovery also how people uses it, but also we are kind of doomed often that how the social structure, social kind of infrastructure or content doesn't really support it. And it's also when you consider, so Korea has been also very transient because there has been so much growth and new construction. Building life expectancy is only 30 years, and average length of people staying in one place is 3 years. So, I mean, that has to change now, I think, because of this kind of now hitting peak soon. I think that will change. So recently we're working on actually 23 clients for one project, which is 6 family, mother and father, and then each family has 1 or 2 kids, and they want to basically live in a commune. So we're actually quite excited to explore this possibility, and this is the full-scale plan on top of our roof we're presenting with them. And it's been quite, I mean, we're also before we're showing this kind of a vertical tower prototypes. But I think also for you, I think you should, I would recommend don't overdo it, but when you do tower, I think technical expertise, sort of a progressive way to deal with this kind of engineering aspect or beauty, the cladding, you know, all these things are fantastic, but I think it's going to be a big challenge when you grow vertically to create also social sort of environment living in the tower. And then history is also, I'm going to go kind of all over, but history is kind of the opposite side of it, because after we built, demolished so much, there is so little substance left in this city, in Seoul. You're looking at Palace on the left, and then the red dot, that whole area is actually one of the few remaining area of this wooden traditional house, although area around our site has been a very sabotaged in the 60s and 70s with 2 or 3 story buildings and so on. And our client is actually like real local residents there who's been living there 3 generations. They actually is a big family, so the old grandparents live there with their grandkids. And then, but this was when Korea started to realize, oops, we really self-sabotage ourselves after wiping these kind of charming old substance with the history. And then it became completely opposite direction, that it turned into a real fetish. So it was kind of predicted that and then it became one of the most expensive building types, and a lot of local has to move out, and it becomes at best become very expensive wine shops and so on. So it's almost like what was happening in Rome. So this become also our project was 2006 it began, and then this was before iPhone and Instagram and all, but now last 3 years it become almost a craze of this rental Korean traditional outfit costume play with selfie sticks, and you'll see hundreds of them walking around, so it really become literally theme park. And we were actually, this project is for a small project, but for us it was very important that it doesn't have this traditional historic area doesn't have to be sort of like a relic, but it could also coexist with this modern building. So it was a tiny site, sharp corner, and this across the street, when our client bought this land, they're living 2 doors away. It just recently become, it wasn't very important building, but because it was the second president's birthplace, that it become a landmark. So that also landmark, all of a sudden, we have to follow this diagonal obligation that they were wanting to build. They thought they can build it in 4-story building, but then they couldn't do it because of this 27-degree obligation. So it's almost like this triangular site, and then you can only build half of it. So, but the site is almost 50 times smaller. So, and then that's when we realized actually they couldn't build this art foundation that is devoted to Asian contemporary culture, non-profit. They couldn't have the space above ground because of this obligation. So we end up proposing actually it goes underground, and because then it will manage to have this 2-story underground space. Again, we're looking at the parking space. I totally with you, Dan, on the maximum number, but not minimum. So we had to have 7 cars proportional to the floor area, but then it becomes like a nice pilotis area. And then you're looking at this triangular window that you can look down, 8 meters below ground. And it become a nice addition. And as you can see, our area around it has a quite, not a traditional building survived area. So, but this took us almost 6 years, although it was a small project, because it took 3 years of 4 different committee approvals. At one point, it was actually death sentence. But then there are some sympathetic other people actually helped us and actually look at not in a most reductive way, but much more delicate way to deal with this area as in more detailed categories. So we are able to build that. So it was in a way, we're quite happy. And this above, so what is above is a restaurant, sort of social function, and then the ground and so on. And the basement, so typically you have a gallery that you look up and there's a nice natural light coming in, but then this one, actually you're descending from the skylight almost. So this is the bottom level. And then we have another challenging project recently. This is 1962, it was built. not by Le Corbusier, but it's actually his pupil who worked with him. And it was French embassy in Korea, Kim Jung-up. And this is a quite iconic project for Korean architect. When you ask Korean architect, best building 20th century, this is always number 2 or number 1. Although nobody saw it, because it's quite private. One is a residence, and the other one is a consulate, which is quite high security area. But another reason is that, okay, there's a Le Corbusier, and then there's an Asian guy behind with glasses. That was Kim Jung-up. He worked on Chandigarh and so on. And it was biggest secret, because nobody saw it, because it was completely barricaded by 23-story towers around it, almost become this very intense valley-like condition. So you can see before it was like almost Acropolis-like situation. But and then one of the competition brief was that because it was, they need, one great thing was they want to have this cultural program, so which is open to public, so they want to open up, and then also they need more office space. But then to do that, they wanted to take down, as a brief, this building that you're looking at, which is already sabotaged, but the roof shape because it has to be rebuilt, because it was one of the first concrete building that he really pushed, then it all fell apart. So this smaller building, lower one, was meant to be taken down. And when 6 architects, a combination of French and Korean, invited on site, we actually brought up, and actually the French government was actually 3 more months, actually stopped the whole process, and they changed the brief, and they decided to sort of save this building, but somehow we have to add in more same floor area in there, so that was a real challenge. So basically for us, we won this competition, and what we did was actually make a horizontal piece that comes out toward the street, and then all the needed, it become like a mini tower that almost hopefully blends in with the other wall of towers, which is on the north side, luckily. And then this horizontal piece was actually original Kim Jung-up's intention, which is completely sabotaged, but then we only extended it toward the main access point. And so this will be something like that. And then that's the lobby, and there will be an art gallery and some gathering space. And it's going to be first time we're doing a sort of like a restoration project that is now about 56-year-old building, and we're very happy to do that. And yeah, so and then the ambassador house cutting through this small pavilion in the middle, it will kind of connect to what we call the jetty, like a Chris Marker film, so that it could also have a nice social function on top. Okay, mobility. Someone talked about the young kids nowadays in America, they don't get license. I've been living without a car, actually. And this was not just because I was just sustainability guy, but 14 years ago when I moved back, it has to do with also previously 3 years riding bicycle in Holland, thank you. And then also in New York, which I couldn't afford to have a car. But it was in Korea when I came back, I realized also it was purely practical reason that I like to live lazy, and I quite like, I don't like to lose 2 hours commuting, no matter how comfortable car is and what kind of entertainment I can get from the car. And then, but then I was asked to do a competition for be a jury, and I had to come up with a theme. And I decided to talk about this less car, better city. What happens when the private car disappears? We talked about that this morning, but in Seoul. And it was also, I teamed up with Kyung Park, who is a founder, some of you know, Storefront for Art and Architecture New York, 1982. And he's more hardcore because he's the one who lived in LA without the car and actually riding bicycle to San Diego, like 3 hours commuting. He happened to be in Korea, so he and I, we actually, for the basis of this sort of a workshop, it became like a campaign that we figure something like that, 3 million parking spaces in Seoul, which is 1/3 of the population, not as many as bicycle in Holland, but when you calculate that entire area into the average real estate price, it was something like 1 Seoul district out of 26 entire area, which costs maybe it can cover next 50 years of annual budget of Seoul, something like that. So actually, we asked these sort of young architects to come up with very specific location, which is all varies in Seoul, how to do, I mean, what actually Dan this morning showed these kind of share cars, and we kind of coined the word SUV-friendly city, as opposed to, PUB-friendly city as opposed to SUV, meaning that personal utility vehicle, such as electric cars or wheelchairs or many other things that are in varying speed. And then at the same time, we're doing this kind of what become MBRDB project. We were also invited. We lost it. And then at the same time, we're doing actually another project that goes back to my last project that I did with the Rem Koolhaas, OMA, which is, David, hope you don't mind. This is actually, I took it from OMA side, but I worked on it. You're looking at this ring road I just mentioned about Seoul. And it was actually this triangular, I'm sorry, let me just point out. This is Incheon city, this is a ring road I mentioned. And then this is Incheon airport, that's how everybody lands. And 19 years ago, it was an ocean, and it's by far the largest reclaimed land. 18 square meter of land was being reclaimed. 19 years ago when we started, they just had a couple of polders starting out. And the idea was that it was kind of an OMA proposal, and the winning was actually creating a network, what we call network area, which kind of has, let's say, more willful, possibly, is of course, something of this scale will be a top-down. So at the beginning, there will be some corporation, in this case, this big steel company, POSCO, will bring their entire operation. And then they have ambition of also hosting international schools to make this entire new part of this newly artificial part of city as a free economy zone with tax benefits and so on. So in fact, and then this remaining area of not created by nodes and these connectors, which we call network, will be more agile sort of development as you go along, will adjust and adapt somehow. And then since then, there was two major economic crises happen. So OMA won that, but then they were only able to continue 1 year, and then somehow it was stopped, and then somehow later took over by this investment company based in New Jersey and brought the entire KPF sort of a team almost as their in-house architect, and they developed this first part of the CBD and conference center and so on. And there is actually, I mean, it says, but what is for me was what was really shocking was that it was quite, they follow more or less the road network, and also all these anchor tenants, such as university, they actually hosted 4 different universities internationally, like New York State University, somehow Johns Hopkins Hospital University, and so on. And then, but then there are patches. So this is looking at the old Incheon city, looking at this, what they're kind of sometimes often present as a 21st century Brasilia. Of course, without, in this case, Niemeyer will be KPF. And of course, there's no political ideology at all, like this connection with the Niemeyer and Costa, with that president, Kushto. And then in this case, a pure market sort of situation. And they kind of are very proud that they're twice the green ratio than New York they have. But in fact, a lot of this green area is completely under-attended, let's say. So it will take time to develop, and I'm very curious. I have been very curious what the light will be like. Their goal is about 600,000 people living there. So far, it's been maybe 10 years people start moving in there, and 100,000 people is said to be living there. So we had this opportunity. That it was the university anchor, what we call this end node, and then there's a subway station with a high-rise office building that with the pictures taken from, and then there's a connective tissue that was designed, part of the OMA master plan, was actually happened exactly the way we planned, maybe a little bit of adjustment in plan, but ironically, this site was given 550 meters, something like that, so it's quite long, was ruined. So, I mean, I thought I get to design something that I was part of designing the Tabla Rasa, but what the task came with was actually came with a history, which was a Daniel Libeskind designed this shopping mall, but 2008 it crashed, so the company got bankrupt. So what we presented was this underground, massive, colossal space that is unfinished by Daniel Libeskind office. But I got somehow, this was what got me into this project, because it was almost walking into this endless silhouette sculpture of very rigorous 8-meter by 8-meter grid. So we looked at the T-shaped site and compared to Incheon Airport, and it's somewhere between Incheon Airport and local airport, Gimpo Airport. So it's a quite large site. And basically, this was when we were doing all this sort of a no-car, better city, the kind of campaign. And it was this, in Korea still, I mean, I was always amazed when I was living in Holland how this choreography of this delicate speed is well maintained is also culture. Seoul also recently had this kind of city bikes, but still culture is quite brutally car-centric, and it's not a really infrastructure only, but it's really have to develop. And I understand that also Holland had this moment that there was also a lot of tragic accidents happened in the 1950s and so on. So basically, PUB-friendly city was a goal. And then we kind of identify this basement, and then also again this connective sort of a tissue function connecting the main subway to the university area. So it's mostly also very young kind of couples with babies or students and so on. But another important idea was that maybe we can have this entire shopping into a PUB-friendly level on every level. So it's actually, you can hopefully ride a bicycle in the basement, also on the roof, connected by these ramps. So this was, we just finished it, opened it early May. And it's also, I mean, it's also, you can see how quickly it filled up with towers and so on. And it took us actually 3 years, so twice as fast as the other little project to deal with the history. On top of the roof, Incheon Soccer Premier League team will teach children's, and then it's already some kids go, doing their scooters. And also Incheon City was quite desperate to have this, they didn't know what to do with this rotting structure underground, and they were quite excited that they allow us to put all this obligatory public art on top of the roof. So invited young artists in Seoul. And then what we've been sort of also proposing to the city is that actually around there will be taller buildings. So this building also maybe because already kind of a prepared, not Highline, not as big as Highline, but it will actually really sort of function as a public ground. And it's mostly 2-story, but it becomes higher because they have to also have could be a good anchor, which is the Cineplex. Because before this, they didn't really have much other interest other than university and, let's say, apartment area. But now young people actually start, this is just after. And of course, very well used by baby stroller mothers and fathers. Also happens internally. And again, this project, there are 200, more than 200 local or international brands of restaurants and shops and so on. And it's pretty kind of, it's not a high end, it's quite like mid-level sort of a facility. So this, and then while we're doing that last year, I was kind of in this craze construction very fast. I had to go to Brasilia because there to really see what if there's really a hope or interest. And I actually walked on the first day, and it was the cliche was true. That is, I felt like a little ant, and it's almost like a landing on a moonscape. But then next day, I was guided in a car tour where it's supposed to be used. And it was a young 24-year-old architect startup who was born in Brasilia. And actually, he brought me all this local secret, also sort of this was the cutest Niemeyer church in residential neighborhood for 20 people. And then there's next to a hot dog stand and so on. So there are actually some exciting street life. And also the current Songdo city, also you see actually somebody else start to use this empty lots into farming and so on. So this probing, I think I'm also quite keen on looking at it. So this is when we began, and this is 2 months ago. And then the last project I'm showing is actually another story that is very contrasting, this Songdo project. This was an opportunity to look at the sort of beyond human-centric, because city is made for humans, of course, but I think we should care about bigger, you have to have a bigger picture, as we all know. And Seoul is about the Seoul River. Seoul River is about 1 kilometer wide, so 3 times of Thames or Seine River in Paris, which is not a romantic river. It's just a flood control. That was the main motivation. And there are 27 bridges. And above is when I was child, I was still able to go, and there was a river beach that was very popular. Of course, it came with the flood every monsoon season, pigs floating around, early 70s. It was also quite different. And below is how it's controlled now, creating all this water walls and so on. And in order to control the flood, this island is called Bamseom, which is in current state. The diagram above is from the left. It was 1968 or 6. That rock island was exploded, almost sacrificed to create the polder to control the water. But then on the right is the current Bamseom somehow re-emerged back because of the sedimentation process, because of this curvy nature. So it was basically a lot of, purpose of the city. Building a city is control nature, but it's been doing its own thing, and it was growing even bigger, a lot bigger than it used to be. And then what add to that was Korea Peninsula is hosting about 60% of the migrating bird. And this island become a very important site because all the birds somehow like to reside there. So it become a very important, what do you call it, Ramses site, which is kind of an equivalent of UNESCO for World Heritage, but the ecology site. I think that has become that recently. So idea of the city that had this invited architect competition was that you cannot go near 200 meters away, closer than this island, because not to scare the bird away, to keep a calm environment, but also but to give a platform for the bird watchers. So this location that you're looking, okay, okay, it's you see. It was actually 4 international and Korean architects were invited, and even the city and the rest of the other architects, they were actually, they were kind of expecting, or they presented as something very iconic because it was perfect, sort of a floating, almost, one of them looks like a Sydney Opera House. And then, but for us was actually quite different idea that instead of this site that has actually, is right in front of this old power plant, which is also turning green, so they become obsolete, so it becomes something of a Tate London kind of a project, become a cultural facility, as a sort of using industrial relic. And then we basically, it was a trap water in front of it to use this river water as a cooling purpose for the power plant. These are the current state, and then also again, these kind of spontaneous things that they put in, sports facility. And then the area along the river become quite bland, but place for sports and bicycle ride and so on. And then we thought maybe it's a time to actually start differentiating these kind of almost tenuous long river edges. And then also instead of, this was our trying to looking like a Bilbao or something to look at, but it's actually to look at birds, basically. And if you know bird watchers, it's a very long, patient, sort of a calm activity for hours with cameras or telescope. So idea was that instead of creating like a standout structure, we make actually satellite Bamseom, because the river flows that direction. So it's almost like creating like babies of this island, because we work with the sort of landscape specialists, especially in this sort of deals with the water flows and so on. So this is before and after section. And then, so we take down this kind of a dam, and then we had to create other level in between the land and the river to create the continuity of the bicycle lane using the elevated highway. And so this is where this new bicycle lane, looking at this sort of simple bird watching structure with this island 250 meters behind. And this will be a pontoon structure. And it also will have deal with a 9-meter fluctuation. And then one of these idea also, as I mentioned, that there is a flooded sort of situation that this floating beam will go up and down, and it will actually bring all those minerals and seeds from this Palm Summer Island. So we'll actually have some kind of a similar situation will happen. And then hopefully we'll, although we're not allowed to go to birds closely, but some of the sort of adventurous ones will come and fly and be close to the city. So I'll end my talk here, and thanks for listening. Thank you very much.